Hello, this is Mark here, Rosebud Records in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I'm here to talk about tapes. This one in particular I was listening to this morning. So, of course, the focus of the store is records, but tapes are back, and some people say they never left, but some pros and cons. We talked about CDs as well in another video. Check that one out. So, let's get to it. Pros and cons. This particular thing is Abbey Road. This is an album I have memorized. I've memorized on most of the instruments that are played on it. I know the parts, It's been around my entire life. So, I know it pretty well. So I use this as my sample. I listen to the digital version in my car and listen to a tape in my car. And if you're wondering, how does this guy listen to tapes in his car? How old is this dude's car? Well, I got one of those little portable tape players that plugs into the aux. And then comparing that to the, so we got digital streaming, digital CD, tape, and record, and kind of comparing them all. And I will say there are some advantages to tape. There's a certain equalization. First of all, it is, like records, they are totally analog. They were analog mastered and analog duplicated, which leads to that hiss, that pleasant little hiss in the background. But it's a connection right to the artist that isn't turned into digital and reassembled later. So it hasn't been sent through the transporter. And there is something, metaphysical, to quote Paul McCartney on Maxwell Silverhammer. There is something to that, I think. I'm not a woo-woo person, but there is something to hearing the actual notes that were actually played, reproduced for you, and not the reproduction of the actual notes that were actually played. It has to do with like analog photography and digital photography as well. Digital photographs can look great, but there is, something to Robert Frank photos that are just stunning. So, and something to the Beatles that's stunning in the same way. So there's that. Then there's an equalization difference. The digital goes higher. It just does. And you get a little more higher definition, especially in remastered things. So the high end, the kind of high end that digital adds just kind of adds a little bit of sparkle. It doesn't even, you're not listening to notes played in that range, but they're just overtones of notes played in a lower range. So that can add some depth. However, tape's low end is superior. And like I was saying, I play the bass. I love the bass playing on this record. And I was hearing nuances in the bass that I'd forgotten about because the bass is so present. And that's due to a little bit of tape compression, but also that that it hasn't been digitized. So the two things that digital has difficulty with in the rock band is the bass and the snare drum, and bass drum as well. Just bass drum, snare drum. Those are the things that come back a little shrunken out of the dryer. And other than that, it's pretty, digital is pretty much okay. I'm not saying, although I devoted so much to records, and digital can be fine. It's a good alternative. However, the reproduction of the bass and the nuance that you can hear in the bass listening to the cassette is pretty stunning. So there's a pro right there. And now the cons, like I said, a little less dynamic range in the high end. Kind of the headroom of the high end is diminished, but that creates a pleasant warm tone. That's not terrible. And then also tapes are mechanical, and so they're prone to mechanical failures. And the failures they have are just mechanical breakdown. The little rollers inside can wear, and the tape itself can stretch, and you get the tape flutter and wobble from poorly stored tapes. And they're not, unlike records, they're not something that's made for the ages. You can put a record, any 33 1/3 LP is essentially fine. They're incredibly durable. They are, they're sensitive to very high heat and being stored on their, at an angle and stuff like that. But if you store them well, they're fine forever, as far as I can tell. CDs also just about indestructible. I have had CDs fail, but super rare. Tapes failure rate is a little higher, and we sell some tapes here. And I just tell people, listen to it. If there's a problem with it, we'll take it back. We haven't been able to listen to all these tapes, and we can't guarantee they don't have flutter and wobble and stuff. But so that's just kind of what we had to say selling tapes. So all in all, tapes are a great part of an analog diet. So you can I wouldn't, use tapes. I wouldn't say tapes are better than records as an analog listening format, as a collectible format, as a records are still, far out in that realm. CDs do have that that indestructibility I was talking about, and no generational loss and no hiss and that kind of stuff. That's important to some people. But tapes are cool. I'm going to go on the record saying tapes are cool. And this tape that I listened to today in my car sounded great. And I'm going to keep it for myself, at least for a little while, and keep listening to it and keep enjoying it. Because anything that helps you enjoy the Beatles more is a good thing. So, check out, like I said, I did a video like this about CDs. There's a bunch of other videos here on YouTube about hi-fi kind of stuff. And thanks for watching. Subscribe, please. I'm bound to say that because that helps build the channel. And check out all the other videos, and I'll talk to you soon.